50,000 years ago, walking alone was almost a death sentence. Today, millions of people choose exactly that every single day without realizing what they're giving up. Picture a small group of humans crossing a savanna at dusk. The wind carries scents no one could identify alone, shadows shift between the bushes, and the distant sound of a predator pulls everybody instinctively closer together, without a single word being spoken. They walk together not because they enjoy company, but because alone, they would be easy prey. And yet this ancient habit, so deeply etched into the body, seems to have quietly vanished from modern life, as if someone had erased an essential instruction from our operating system. But here's the strangest part: nobody decided this consciously. No human meeting ever declared, "Let's stop walking in groups." It simply unraveled, generation after generation, without us noticing the gears loosening. The detail almost no one catches is that the human body still reacts as if it were on the savanna, even surrounded by buildings, cars, and LED lights. To understand how this happened, you have to imagine a species that spent 99% of its existence depending on other bodies to survive, now spending most of its time alone behind four walls. But this story didn't start the way it looks. Go back with me to a time when there were no supermarkets, no door locks, no artificial light to push back the fear of night. The first human groups were small, usually between 20 and 50 individuals, and every person in that group represented a piece of collective survival. One tended the fire, another listened for sounds in the forest, another guarded the children's sleep while adults rested in shifts. Walking alone meant losing that shared system of protection. An isolated human couldn't watch 360 degrees at once, couldn't sleep safely, couldn't hunt large prey or defend against stronger predators. Loneliness, in that world, wasn't an emotional state. It was a biological death sentence. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden stories behind humanity's most ordinary behaviors, this is exactly the kind of content this channel exists for, so it might be worth subscribing before we go any further. The human brain evolved under that constant social pressure. Every decision, every gesture, every facial expression was processed through a silent question: does this bring me closer to the group or push me away from it? Because being left out meant, quite literally, dying faster. That pressure shaped one of the brain's most powerful systems, the social reward circuit. Smiles, hugs, approving looks, physical closeness, all of it triggers ancient neurochemical pathways tied to oxytocin and dopamine, chemicals that originally existed to reinforce behaviors which increased the odds of collective survival. But that still doesn't explain everything. Because if walking together, eating together, and sleeping near one another was so vital, why did modern life manage to pull us apart so easily? The answer starts with a small evolutionary advantage that, without meaning to, cracked open the door to everything that followed. At some point in human history, groups that cooperated better, divided labor more efficiently, and partially trusted strangers began growing beyond the size of small tribes. This allowed trade, agriculture, cities. And here the past starts bleeding into modern life in a curious way. The variability that united us into larger groups also handed us the tools to isolate ourselves within them. Researchers studying present-day hunter-gatherer societies, like certain groups still living in Tanzania or parts of the Amazon, notice a revealing pattern: these communities spend most of their time physically close to one another, even when no specific task is being carried out. There's no concept of alone time as we understand it today. Eating, resting, telling stories, walking to fetch water, everything happens collectively, almost like a single organism with many parts moving in unison. This isn't cultural coincidence. It's a direct echo of millions of years of evolutionary pressure. What makes this even stranger is that, biologically, we're still nearly identical to those ancient groups. Cities rose, cars appeared, the internet connected the entire planet, but the brain processing all of it is still the same model built on the savanna. A brain that feels physical relief when near other people, that releases stress hormones when it senses exclusion, that reads prolonged silence and isolation as danger, even when, rationally, we know we're perfectly safe at home. This detail seems small, but it changed everything. Industrialization brought specialized labor, individual housing, motorized transport, and long-distance communication. Suddenly, it became possible to survive, eat, and stay protected without depending directly on a physical group around you. Survival no longer required constant proximity. And that's exactly where the old machinery started to grind. There was just one problem: the body never got the memo that the rules had changed. Studies in social neuroscience show that chronic loneliness activates brain patterns similar to physical pain. That's not just a poetic phrase. It's literal. The human brain treats prolonged absence of connection much like a threat to survival, because for almost our entire evolutionary history, that's exactly what it was. Once, walking close to other people could directly save your life, helping you avoid predators or share food during scarcity. Today, that same instinct shows up in a completely different form, in the anxiety of going too long without a message, in the discomfort of eating alone in public, in the strange unease of walking down an empty street, in the inexplicable relief of simply being near other people in a cafe, even without exchanging a single word. The modern world changed fast, but the body and brain still carry the old scars. Modern life confused physical proximity with social closeness. Today it's possible to be digitally connected to hundreds of people and still feel an emptiness that no like or comment can fill. That happens because the human brain never evolved to recognize screen-mediated interaction as equivalent to in-person contact. It responds, partially, but not in the same way. There's no scent of another body, no shared warmth, no synchronized rhythm of footsteps, no comfortable silence of walking beside someone without needing to say a word. These signals, which seem like small details of ancient daily life, were actually essential parts of the human emotional architecture. Here's the most surprising part: scientists studying interpersonal synchronization discovered something curious by observing people walking side by side. When two people walk together long enough, their footsteps tend to sync up, even without conscious intention. Their heart rates can drift closer together in rhythm, and the subjective feeling of comfort increases. This isn't a cultural coincidence. It's a direct leftover of group behaviors that once helped maintain cohesion among tribe members during long, dangerous treks. Walking together wasn't just practical. It was, quite literally, a form of collective emotional regulation. And this is where modern life reveals its most ironic side. The more technologically advanced we become, the more individually isolated we grow, often without even noticing. We work in silence in front of screens, eat lunch alone, move through the world isolated inside cars or behind headphones, and return home to live, sometimes alone, by choice or circumstance. Each of these adaptations brought comfort, freedom, and efficiency. But it also brought a silent cost: the slow erosion of what historically regulated human emotional health. Recent research links chronic social isolation to increased inflammation, a weakened immune system, higher cardiovascular risk, and a direct impact on life expectancy, comparable, in some studies, to risk factors like smoking. That's not an exaggeration. It's the biological consequence of removing an organism from the social environment it was shaped, over millions of years, to need. But the most interesting contradiction isn't just involuntary loneliness. It's also in the way modern society, paradoxically, glorifies extreme independence. Phrases like "I don't need anyone" or "I'm self-sufficient" carry a certain cultural pride, as if depending on other people were a sign of weakness. Except, evolutionarily, depending on others was never weakness. It was, in fact, the smartest survival strategy our species ever developed. Humans never beat nature through individual strength. They beat it through cooperation. Which brings us to a deeper truth hiding behind something as simple as walking in a group. Maybe the sense of incompleteness so many people feel in modern life isn't an individual psychological flaw, but an ancient biological signal trying to warn that something essential is out of place. It's not weakness, and it's not oversensitivity. It's evolutionary memory trying to communicate through sensations we haven't yet learned to translate correctly. The deepest turn in this story is realizing that human beings were never built to walk through life alone, even though the modern world has invented 1,000 ways to make that possible. We built enormous cities, yet many people feel lonelier inside them than any hunter-gatherer ever felt out on the open savanna, because there, surrounded by very real dangers, they were never truly alone. So maybe, the next time you walk beside someone, even in silence, even for no clear reason at all, notice how your steps naturally fall into rhythm with theirs. That small, almost invisible detail is an echo of thousands of generations that came before you, quietly reminding you that no one was ever meant to walk the whole way alone.